This is a special report from CBS News in Washington. The Congress and Cosa Nostra. The story of Joseph Valachi's testimony today before Senator McClellan's investigating subcommittee.
To destroy the whole syndicate, the whole organization.
That's right, yeah.
Why do you feel like it should be destroyed?
Well, through the years, first of all, I want revenge. Second of all, they've been very bad to the soldiers. And they've been thinking for themselves all through the years.
In other words,
and all put together. I could put together a number of, so many things that it all comes to all one to destroy them.
There are just many reasons that add up to the fact
Right.
you don't think that such an organization should be permitted to operate, to
That's
exist.
right.
Is that correct?
That's right. As the senator put it before, what did I get out of it?
What'd you get out?
Nothing but misery. As you all understand, once you're in, you can't get out.
Good evening. This is Roger Mudd. The sworn testimony you just heard came from the lips of Joseph Valachi, lips that supposedly were sealed 33 years ago when he joined America's underworld crime syndicate, Cosa Nostra. But today, before a spellbound Senate hearing, televised nationally, the 60-year-old Valachi talked in such a way that this convicted dope peddler, burglar, and murderer seemed to draw the sympathy of the crowd and the McClellan committee. Valachi said today he was talking because he wanted revenge. But it is also possible he was talking for self-protection, because his syndicate boss, Vito Genovese, had ordered him killed as an informer. The two men shared a cell in the Atlanta penitentiary, and Genovese had heard from one of Valachi's co-defendants in a narcotics case that he had become an informer. One night last year, after the cell block lights had been turned off, Valachi said Genovese let him know it.
He said, sometimes you buy a barrel of apples, and one of these apples is touched.
Is touched.
Touched. Touch means a little touch. Not all rotten, but a little touch.
True. I see.
He said, that apple has to be removed, or it'll touch the rest of the apples.
What significance did that have to you?
Just shaking my head and listening to him.
I say, what significance did that have to you?
I was just shaking my head and listening to him.
You were shaking your head and listening. All right, go ahead.
And, in fact, I was doing it now unconsciously. As I was telling you, I was shaking my head. I just caught myself.
Yeah, all right, go ahead. That is what you were doing.
So, with that, he says, I think we go to sleep. He got up and he said, grabbed my hand and he gave me a kiss.
Grabbed your hand and gave you a kiss.
He gave me a kiss.
Yeah?
So I turned around and I gave him a kiss on the other side.
Yeah?
And,
is that some ritual that goes along in your organization?
No, this is a suspicious kiss.
This is a suspicious kiss. Very well. Very well, go ahead.
So with that, I sleep on the left bottom bunk, and Ralph Wagon sleeps on the right bottom bunk. See, we have one bunk on top of the other, see. Ralph mumbled under his breath, the kiss of death.
Ralph Wagner mumbled that.
Yeah.
I see.
I ignored them.
You ignored it. Go ahead.
Naturally, I lay down and trying to figure out all night, And I even noticed he used to take peeps to see if I was asleep, because he was across me, see, Vito Genovese. Well, I must admit I was upset.
Did you know what Genovese was talking about at that time? When
Not yet.
You didn't yet know?
No.
But it had a meaning to you.
Oh, yeah. As I said,
You knew
The
what it meant,
suspicious
but
kiss.
you didn't know why he did it. Yeah.
Well, look, an outsider got wise, Senator.
A what?
An outsider, like Ralph.
Yeah.
He got wise.
He was right.
He even was wise. So what ain't I supposed to be smart?
Yeah.
In other words...
May I ask you, Senator Curtis here suggests, and I think it's
Yeah.
well, did you at the time accept and regard that as a kiss of death?
Yeah, but that's why I say I didn't answer Ralph. That's the reason why I said that. But I didn't think the kid would get it.
You didn't think the kid would get it. But
Right.
the kid got it.
He got it. So
Would it be...
how can I miss when he got it?
Yeah. All right,
Right.
I don't think you missed. But, yeah, just one other idea. One other. Now, you're kissing him in return. Is that a practice?
It was to make him understand I was smart to him.
You were what?
Smart to him on that kiss. That's why I kissed him back.
He was smart. He understood what he meant.
You...
That morning I come out, and actually I was really at a state I didn't know what to do. I walked up and
Were
down.
you in a state of fear?
Yeah.
Afraid for your life?
I walked up and down about once, twice. I made about...
Go ahead.
I made one lap of a distance of about 4 blocks. The yard is about, I say, 4 blocks long. Then I made another lap, and then I made another one, and then on my way back, I spot Joe Beck. I could have spotted Mike Capola. I could have spotted any one of these guys. It wouldn't have made any difference to me. Well, it happened to be near a construction. And as soon as I saw him, I don't know what I thought I found.
Where were you on your way to at the time?
Well, I was on my way from walking. Now, I found him in front of me.
You found him in front of you?
In front of me, yeah.
And who was behind you?
Well, he was walking with another guy, see? And right away, I saw the pipe. I grabbed the pipe, and I went to wake on Joe Beck. At least, that's what I thought it was.
You saw a man you thought was Joe Beck.
Right.
Right in front of you.
Right.
One of these that you understood were under orders to kill you.
Right.
You honestly believe that they were under orders from Genovese to kill you there in prison?
Yes, 100%, Senator.
100%.
Yes.
So when you saw Joe Beck, who you thought was Joe Beck, in front of you,
Right.
you did what?
I hit him on the head with the pipe. And
A piece of iron pipe from the construction job there?
Well, yeah, they were building a new industry at this particular place of the yard, you know, near the end of the ball stand, grandstand.
And you hit him with that pipe?
Yeah.
More than once?
About 3 times.
About 3 times?
Very hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Then what did you do?
Well, then I saw a couple of guys running towards me, but I didn't know who they were. See, in my excitement, I could see people, but I can't make them, see?
You were in a frenzy, I guess, at that time, weren't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to explain it, Senator. I could
You
see
don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I could see the people, because I must tell you that as I found out in the hole after, from other inmates, who these 3 people were.
You didn't know at that time, though?
No, all I know, they were rushing for me, and I rushed for them. I let go of that guy, and I rushed at them, and they rushed back. It went on like that.
You started at them with the pipe, and they went back.
I went at them, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
In other words, they made about 2 attempts before the officer come over. See? Now, when the officer come over, he wanted to take the pipe off me. I said, no, you don't get this pipe. I says, I'll walk to the Associated Warden's office, but you don't take this pipe from me.
You wasn't going to let him take the pipe.
Well, I can't tell him there's a couple of guys trying to get me.
You didn't have time to tell him that, did
I think if I hand him the pipe, them guys may come at me. So every now and then I'm looking behind as I'm walking with the officer.
You walked on with the officer to where?
All
the
the way-
warden's office?
All the way to the Associated Warden's office.
The Associated Warden's office.
Yeah.
And then what happened about him telling you who you had actually assaulted?
He showed me a picture.
He showed you a picture. That is the Associate Warden?
Yes, I still don't remember his name. A picture he showed me, I think it was not a cup by a first picture he showed me. I said to him, who's this? He says, that's the guy you intended to hit. I know, he says, that's the guy you hit.
That's the guy you hit. The first picture he showed.
And then he showed me another picture. He took that away, and this is the guy you intended to hit. Well,
is that when you first knew that you had hit the wrong man?
Yes, Senator. You could imagine how I felt. I told him, just lock me up after that.
You what?
I told him, lock me up after that. I sank in a chair, you know.
You what?
I sank in a chair, you know.
Sank
I slumped in a chair.
You slumped in the chair.
Yeah.
Senator McIntyre?
In view of all these disclosures to the FBI and the justice that you've made, how safe do you feel?
The way I am now. Right now.
How safe do you feel?
Now? At
Yes.
this moment, I feel fine.
How would you feel if you went back to prison?
I'll have to protect myself again, Senator. I'll have to kill or be killed again.
Would it be,
If you notice, Senator, I wouldn't say they'd kill me. I'll always fight back, Senator. If I go in prison.
would it be fair to say that if you went back to prison that you'd be a dead man?
If they got at me, I wouldn't be in there 5 minutes, Senator.
Is it usually possible for the organization to kill somebody when they're in prison? If they want to?
The truth?
Yes.
No. I think he went a little too far, Vito Genovese, in this case.
It was at this point, apparently, when Valachi thought Genovese had gone too far, that he decided to sing for protection. An FBI agent was assigned to him full time, and the Justice Department began filling in the blanks on its chart of Cosa Nostra. This is Valachi's great value, says the department. He is the first member of Cosa Nostra publicly to confirm its existence. Senator McClellan is the questioner.
May I ask at this time, I don't care to go into details now, but when did you become a member of this organization?
1930.
In 1930. What is the name of it? It is
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Our thing and our family in English.
Our thing and our family in English. We'll come back to that later, but that is an organization, is it?
Yes.
That requires absolute obedience
Yes.
and conformity to its policy as handed down by those in authority.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, we might ask you at this time, what are the different positions or ratings or rank in that organization? Starting at the top, what do you have?
Well, we have what we call argumentación. That's sort of like in English you would express it as a commission. And then we have...
That is, as of now, you have the commission. But in the past, when the time you joined it, what did you have?
Well, they used to have what we call the boss of all bosses.
The boss of all bosses. All right.
And we had the individual bosses of the individual family. Then we had an underboss. Then we have what we call a cabrigine, which is a lieutenant. And we had what we call soldiers.
Soldiers?
Soldiers.
Are they also called button men?
Well, on the outside, they call them button men. So
On the outside, but in the organization, they're called soldiers.
Right.
So you had the boss of all bosses, then the boss of a family, then the underboss of a family, and then the lieutenants.
No. I meant to say, you want that in Italian, too?
Well, yeah.
Usottagaba is the expression of the underboss.
All right, what is the expression of the lieutenant?
Cabrigine.
All right, now what's the expression of the button men or soldiers?
Soldiers.
Just soldiers.
Just soldiers amongst our own
So
organization.
those were the ranks or levels in the organization.
Yes.
You say now, however, there is a commission. Does it now have a boss of all bosses?
No, no more boss of all boss. They have what you call a consigliere. A consigliere. A consigliere is like, I I put it to you this way. Charlie Luciano, Charlie Lucky, put it in effect, a member of 6 to protect the soldiers. Because if a lieutenant in the old days had it in for a soldier, or he want to pick on the soldier, he could, he would make up stories. And to protect the soldier, they formed this, what we call consigliere. In case of soldiers accused about something, well, then the lieutenant or whoever it may be must bring up charges on him.
In other words, that is something that's settled within each family.
Right.
May
Would
you...
that be a sort of a kangaroo court? I mean,
Well, you call it a kangaroo court. That's right.
court that you set up
Right.
in your own outfit.
Right.
And about how many soldiers would usually be under a boss?
Well, certain families have about, say, Vito Genovese has about 450.
400?
In and around that. Yeah.
450?
About 450. Could be even 500, but I'm giving it...
His, I take it, was the largest of these families.
Well, I think between Vito's and Gambina's family, just about both large families. I'm talking about Gambino now.
How many soldiers belonged to the little army that you were part of?
Well, that I was with Vito Genovese. That's the family, see. Or Aro Brigade in Italian.
Now, within the ranks of this army of crime, these soldiers, were they all at the same level, or did you have sergeants and captains and some degree?
We had, for instance, I'll estimate it, we say about 20 to 25 gabardines. And
What
it's
are
some, we call this a regine, like, I don't know how to call it in English. A regine, like, say, for instance, I'll talk about my regime. We had about 30 under one lieutenant, like.
Like a regiment.
Wait a minute,
Like a
now,
regiment.
let's get some order here, and one at a time, and if you'll address the
Yeah,
chair,
now-
the chair will recognize you.
Now, there's other lieutenants may have 60. It varies. Some may have 40. Some may have less. It all varies, you know.
In other words, within this little army, they're broken up in companies or
Yeah,
brigades or something.
Right, yeah.
And the whole army would be about 450, 500 under a boss.
Yeah, I rate, say, Gambina's family and Vito Genovese just about almost the same, you know, in as far as how many soldiers are concerned.
One other question on that point. Do all of the soldiers know each other? Did you know who the rest of the army was?
Well, I wouldn't say all of the soldiers know each other.
Most of you knew each other.
If they meet, one introduces another as you go along in life.
Any further questions? Any questions at this point by any of my colleagues? Any other member?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Mudd.
I think it ought to be clear that we're not speaking about family in the usual sense. This is not family in the sense of fathers and mothers, sons.
No. We're not speaking about that.
This is simply an organization of people who are not necessarily related to each other.
Right. No. What'd you say, related? No, we're speaking about this Cosa Nostra. That's the expression they use, but not an immediate family. By no means. It don't mean mother or father or sister or brother or anything like that. Is that what you mean, Senator?
Yes. Now, may I ask one more question? Do these families meet as such? Do these 450 members, for example, of one family ever meet
Well,
for the purpose of doing family business?
Well, my family, I'm there 30 years. They never met. Not as a whole. But we did have every Christmas a table, like a dinner. My regime would consist of the 30 I was telling you about. And the rest of the families here and there, some did and some didn't. But my family, the one I belonged to for 30 years, never met as a whole.
So they didn't even know each other, really.
Well, as I said, they would get to know each other as they went along, and meet you meet quite a bit in life as you go. When you may be someplace and you know a member, and he's with some member you don't know, he'll introduce him to you.
Well, this is a secret organization. How do you get to know that somebody is a member of the same family?
He'll introduce him to you, for instance, as a friend of ours. That means a member. Now, if he happens to be with someone that isn't a friend of ours, he would just simply say, meet a friend of mine, which means nothing. That's the code between us.
So there was a code that enabled you to identify other members of the family?
Yes.
Did you do anything for the family at all in this time, or did they just do things for you?
Just go out, kill for them.
You'd go out what?
Kill for them.
And you will tell us, in other words, when they asked you to do something like that, you will tell us about that later in the hearing, I gather. Right. Is that correct? And that's the only thing you did for them. That was the only relationship. Is that right?
During the afternoon, Valachi told the committee of his progress from childhood to Cosa Nostra. Quit school at grade 7A, got his working papers at 15, lied about his age and worked honestly for 1 year as a river barge captain, and then in 1922 joined a burglary gang on 108th Street in Manhattan. His colleagues, Big Dick Amato, Giovanni Schicciolani, known as Al Brown, Joseph Gagliano, known as Pip the Blind, Charles Albero, known as Charlie Bullets, and Frank Calachi, known as Chick 99. Committee counsel Jerry Adlerman is the questioner.
Now, what type of burglary did you engage in at that time? Could you describe what the
activity was? We were crashing windows and jewelry windows or fur windows, taking expensive furs and suits, silk, in that line.
Now, what area were you crashing?
You mean what particular area? Yeah. Any part of the city.
Well, did you specialize in any areas like Madison Avenue or Lexington Avenue or Tremont Avenue or something?
If you want to get, good coats, you had to go to Fifth Avenue or 6th Avenue or Madison Avenue.
I see. And what would be the nature of the operation? How would you engage in this operation?
Well, we used to throw a milk can in a window. We started that way and grab the coats and run and get in the car and go.
Did you use a car to do that?
Yeah, we developed a name. The police called us Minutemen.
Why? Why did they call you the Minutemen?
Because we got away from the burglary either in a minute's time or less. Because these stores, most of them had what we call homes protection. And they take about 5 to 7 minutes.
Did you ever time them to before you made a real attempt? How would you do that?
Well, I threw a brick in a window on 25th Street once because the patrol office was at 125th Street West, and I had something in mind on 125th Street East. So I threw a brick in to see how long it'd take him to come.
Did you time them?
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
And then you felt safe, and if you could do
well, I know we can get away from there in less than a minute or a minute.
How many of these type of robberies would you do in a week at that time?
A couple a week.
2?
2, 3.
Any more than 3?
Well, according to how the weather was.
Uh-huh. And what was your function in the...
I used to drive all the time.
You had a reputation as a driver of the getaway car?
Yes.
And did you have your car specially equipped in any way?
I used to get a special pinion gear for second speed. Just second speed.
Just the second speed.
Yeah.
And you used to have a second gear specially installed?
Yeah, well, at that time, the mechanic used to call it a special pinion gear, which instead of this big, would be this big.
This would be geared up in second gear a little higher so you can get away faster.
That will pick up faster.
You could go about how fast in that?
Well, at that time, 60 miles an hour in second was a lot of speed.
That was a hot car.
That was a lot of speed at that time. Well, at this time now, we're not crashing windows anymore. They are getting in through the front doors. They discovered, some kind of tools, and we jimming we use an expression, jimming the doors. And one of the tools broke, and they come over and asked me if we got time to go back to Harlem. I said, sure, get in the car. As we were riding, I only heard one shot, and I was shot in the head.
You were shot in the back of the head?
Back of the head, yeah.
All right. Now, do you know what the gang did with you at that time?
Yeah, well, naturally, I found out after. I was told that Charlie Bullets took the wheel. They put me in the back of the car, and Charlie Bullets took the wheel. And they placed me in a street at 114th Street, Pleasant Avenue. And they fired about 5-6 shots in the air.
What was the purpose of firing these shots?
Well, this way, when they picked me up, and the authorities would feel that I was shot in 114th Street.
In other words, they pretended to shoot. They shot 6 bullets or 6 shots in the air, yeah. And then they felt that the authorities would feel that somebody tried to rub you out or kill you. Was that the idea?
And this way would take the attraction away from 174th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue.
I see. Well, what happened as a result of that?
Well, they came back about an hour later. Naturally, they had to tell me all this when I got well. And I was still in the street. Nobody came.
Nobody paid any attention to the shots. Is that right? Huh? Nobody paid any attention to the shots? Nobody called the police or anything?
No.
Right. And what did they do with you then?
Well, they told me they put me in a baby carriage in the hallway, and they went looking for a doctor. Finally, they brought me to a doctor, and they gave me a whole bottle of scotch for anesthetic, and they took the doctor.
In other words, they used scotch as the anesthetic while they took out the bullet in the back of your head?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
And was that done by a doctor?
Yes.
Do you know who the doctor was?
I don't remember his name.
You don't know. And what did they do with you after that?
Well, then they smuggled me into a hospital on 86th Street. And while I was in the hospital, I was mumbling and giving different stories and calling their names. And once I would say I was shot while hunting, and another time I would say I was walking, all kinds of stories. So they realized they had to move me out of the hospital, and they brought me...
Was that because they felt you were talking too much?
Yeah, well, yeah. And they brought me to 100th Street, Manhattan Avenue, a hospital called the Community Hospital. And I stood there until I got released. I was there about 3 months, semi-conscious.
Semi-conscious. And they treated you in this hospital.
Yeah.
Do you know whether that was ever reported to the police?
No, that never was reported.
And do you know how much they paid the doctor for this?
Yeah, they told me they gave the doctor $2,500.
Valachi resumes his public testimony Tuesday. After watching him for almost 4 hours today, it's easy to become sympathetic to him. His Damon Runyon aura, his fascinating glimpses into an unknown world, his defiance of a semi-military terrorist organization. But there is another side. As Committee Counsel Adlerman said today, there are so many murders, we can't do them all. We have to be selective. This is Roger Mudd in Washington. Good night.
The Congress and Cosa Nostra. This program was on edited videotape. This has been a special report from CBS News.
For one brief moment today, the nation's most televised criminal left his seat at the witness table to confer very privately with the nation's most televised senator. The limelight followed, but the microphones could not, as Democrat John McClellan of Arkansas and gangster Joseph Valachi of the Atlanta Penitentiary whispered about Congress and Cosa Nostra.
This is a special report from CBS News. The Congress and the Cosa Nostra. Here now is CBS News correspondent Roger Mudd.
Good afternoon. As Joseph Valachi began his third day of testimony before the McClellan Investigating Subcommittee, the guard of U.S. Marshals that accompanies him seemed larger, and the precautions to protect him seemed more elaborate. Valachi, though never a big-time operator in the criminal underworld, has now reached the point where he is naming names of those he says are responsible for a string of unsolved gangland murders in 1930 and 31. Yesterday, Valachi fingered one Girolamo Santuccio, alias Bobby Doyle of Stamford, Connecticut, as the killer of the gang boss Joseph Pinzola. But this morning when the hearing opened, Abraham Ribicoff, the junior senator from Connecticut, was waiting to correct the record.
Yesterday, when Mr. Valachi testified, he identified a man by the name of Bobby Doyle of Stamford, Connecticut. I received a call last night from from a Robert Doyle of Stamford. Just by coincidence, there's only one Robert Doyle in Stamford. Robert Doyle of Stamford is 45 years of age. In 1930, he was 12 years old. He is 6'6". He is of Irish extraction. His father's name was Doyle, also of Irish extraction. He is married with 4 children. He has 6 brothers and sisters with an aged mother and father. Well, once the statement was made that this was Robert Doyle of Stamford, all the Doyles have been deluged with telephone calls. They have been placed in a very embarrassing position. The mother and father, who are aged, have been caused great concern. Now, I have checked with the former mayor and the commissioner of state police in the state of Connecticut, and I am convinced myself that the Robert Doyle of Stamford in no way could be the man referred to as Bobby Doyle of Stamford by the witness. And I think, in all fairness to an innocent man in Stamford, the record should be clear so his friends and neighbors and employers will have no doubt that the Robert Doyle of Stamford, the only Robert Doyle in Stamford, is not the man identified by the witness yesterday before this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator, and we'll undertake to clear it up. I regret, of course, we all do, that innocent person's name was confused with one about whom the witness was testifying to. And I'd like to present to the witness at this time a photograph, which I understand to be that of the Bobby Doyle he is talking about. And let the witness examine this photograph and see if he identifies it.
It's Bobby Doyle from Hartford, Connecticut. Senators, I thought I said Hartford, Connecticut.
You thought you said what?
Hartford, Connecticut yesterday.
Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah, if I said Stamford, I'm sure I said it unconscious. I meant Hartford, Connecticut.
I'd like to ask you, Mr. Valachi, over the years, since you were associated with this group, have you worked and traveled in any state other than New York and the surrounding states there?
Well, I visit. I visit Buffalo and I visit Utica, New York.
You haven't gone to the Middle West?
I went to Arkansas years back, 19... I went to the bad, Senator.
I see.
I didn't understand what you did.
I was trying to tell him I went to the bats in Arkansas.
Did you get cleaned up down there?
Yeah. You know the 21-day bats?
Yeah. All right. Have you ever been in Chicago and made any contacts with the Cosa Nostra?
No, I stopped in Chicago on the way to Arkansas.
Yes. Did you make any contacts with any of the...
No contacts. I mean, in Utica, yes.
No, I mean in Chicago.
No contacts.
Have you ever been in Kansas City?
No, not that I recall.
And have you ever been in Omaha?
Nope.
Nebraska. Now, do you know whether or not there are members of the Cosa Nostra operating in Omaha?
Senator, I never heard of Omaha. I never heard anything about Omaha.
Does the Cosa Nostra deal with people who are not members? In other words, do they put someone in the numbers racket and cooperate with them even though they are not members, haven't been taken in as members?
They do.
In fact, they use a great many people.
They do.
Senator McIntyre.
Joe, have you ever been to Boston?
In Boston, yes.
You ever hear of a man named Petriarca?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, there's just a few questions in my mind. Yesterday, when you've been discussing contracts, that you get a contract.
Yes, sir.
Is this something that's assigned to you by one of the bosses or lieutenants? Is it given to an individual of the family, or is it given to a group of individuals?
Well, 99 times out of 100, Senator, it's given to you by a lieutenant, to the one whom is in charge of that particular contract. It could be I, it could be anybody, but that one particular soldier will get the contract, and then he picks himself who he wants to take along with him. Is that what you mean, Senator?
And this man who gets the contract does the actual planning of the operation, whatever it may be.
That's right, yeah, he's in charge.
Now, one other question. Did you ever propose anyone for the Cosa Nostra?
Oh, yes, I did.
Were you ever present, not at the table, but were you ever present at any other initiation other than your own?
Well, right now, I never remember being present, Senator, in any tables.
Very well, let us proceed now with yesterday. We were approaching at least, leading up to the killing of Masseria. Masseria? No, Masseria. We had just gotten to the point where he had been taken to a restaurant somewhere. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, at Coney Island.
At Coney Island. Now, who got him over there to the restaurant?
His friends, Charlie Lucky and Vito Genovese and Cyril Tavernova.
Those three persuaded him.
Well, they were the important ones.
I didn't understand you.
They were the important ones.
They were the important ones that got him to come over there to a dinner. And prior to that time, had he been staying in pretty closely and not going out much?
Senator, I was told that he had about 3 or 4 doors before his own brother could get to him.
Had to go by what?
3 or 4 doors before his own brother can get to him.
Doors, I see. What I was trying to determine was that you had been trying, actually, your side, the Maranzano group, had been trying to get to him to kill him for a good while, had they not?
Oh, yes, Senator, yes.
For some months.
Yes, Senator.
And when you were unable to do it, well, you finally got, as I understand you, this Genovese and these others to set him up for you.
They set him up for Maranzano. They came to times that they will take care of. In other words, they didn't want the Maranzano's men should have anything to do with it. They wanted to do it themselves.
They wanted to do it.
Themselves.
That is, his own lieutenants, his own people around him wanted to do it.
That's right.
And they got him over to this Coney Island restaurant.
Right, I understand it took them about 5 to 6 months to get him there.
Took them 5 or 6 months to get him there. And that's when it happened.
That's when
the Maranzano crowd didn't do that killing.
No, they did not.
It was Masseria's own people.
His own people.
That killed him at that restaurant. Right. Were there very many present? Do you know? You were not present at that.
I wasn't there, but I was told. Cyril was there, Vito was there, Charlie was there, a fellow named Cheech was there, and Joe Stretch was there. And they even, somebody described to me, I don't remember who, our Cyril was so shaky in putting the key in the ignition that they threw him off the wheel. I'm talking about Cyril Tavernova. And they threw him off the wheel, and ever since then, Cyril Tavernova was getting what we call buckwheats.
Getting what?
What we call buckwheats, you know, like he was being stripped, a little at a time, he was being taken off, his power was being taken away from him. And after a while, he took it so hard that he died from a broken heart. I'm talking about Cyril Talvanova.
He kind of lost face, did he, with his...
Yes. And they replaced him at that time with Mike Capola.
In other words, they felt that he didn't have enough nerve.
Well, yes, he sort of put it this way, he disgraced himself.
He disgraced himself.
Couldn't get the key.
By showing his nervousness.
Yeah, he was shaking. So I got that from the soldiers as we go along in life.
You started to tell us the details of the killing of Masseria as it was told to you.
What's that, Senator?
You started to tell us the details of the killing at the Coney Island restaurant. You were not there. He was killed by his own lieutenants, but you said you were told what took place.
That's right.
Well, you relate it to us as it was told to you.
That's right.
Do that.
That's right.
Go ahead.
I was told, naturally, about 5 days after that, there was peace. Now we're closing this war. And I was told, now the first story I heard was about Cyril, as I explained to you about him shaking, putting the key in the ignition, and it wasn't about maybe, I don't think he lasted more than about a year.
No, what I'm trying to find out, was he shot, was he bombed, was he struck with a blade, how was he killed?
You're talking about Joe Masseria?
That is correct.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Cyril. Yeah, he was shot. He was shot...
in the restaurant?
In the restaurant.
Walking in by surprise?
No, they were sitting down, they talked a while, and in the course of, having conversation in between, maybe a half hour, an hour, I don't know how long it lasted, they shot him in this time.
Any of them caught?
No, not that I know of. No one was caught.
Unsolved crime as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. What did the records of the New York police force show about it?
Show that at 3:30 p.m. on April 15th, 1931, Giuseppe Masseria, alias Joe the Boss, last known to have resided at 65 2nd Avenue, New York City, while sitting in a restaurant at 2715 West 15th Street in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn, was shot in the back and head by unknown persons who escaped. The cause of death were 6 gunshot wounds of the head and body. This is an active
shot
case.
in the back.
In the back and in the head.
In the back and in the head. Obviously, his assailant then was. He had his back to his assailant.
It would appear that way, so yes.
So it was in a restaurant.
In the Coney Island section of Brooklyn.
Were the police never able to get any lead on who may have committed the crime?
Not to the point where there was evidence which could be presented to a grand jury.
You didn't get sufficient to present to a grand jury?
No, sir.
You were here yesterday when Mr. Valachi talked about the shooting of Baker, I believe it was, the fellow who... you shot him where the fellows were doing the painting. Who was it you shot from there? You didn't shoot him, but who was shot?
Joe Baker.
Baker. You were here when he described that murder, were you?
Yes, sir.
And he said there were 3 painters in there.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering whether or not you had been able to contact those painters.
At this time, sir, no.
Yeah.
No,
Because it seemed this is a pretty hot lead. Painters go on assignment. You could find out from the records of the painting company who they were. They would be able to have some kind of identification of the 3 people described by Mr. Valachi. The painters saw the murderers, did they not, Mr. Witness?
Oh, yeah, they were
Yes.
there.
I just wondered if you had a report for the committee on that.
No, you see, Senator...
That's pretty fast work, I know that. I wouldn't expect you to.
As I have explained, these are all active cases.
Yeah.
In view of the new leads which have been recently made available, these cases are under active investigation now. And because of that, the district attorneys in the counties concerned, there are 5 counties in New York City, they have indicated that they would like us to cooperate with the committee to the extent of identifying the homicide which is spoken of, but they prefer that we do not go into any detail concerning these active investigations at this time, because it might possibly prejudice the case.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Valachi, why weren't these 3 painters who were eyewitnesses to the murder Why weren't they killed?
We never even dreamed about them, Senator.
In other words, you just the concentration was on the marked man and nothing else.
That's right. On Joe Baker.
Yes.
What is the rule about that in the Cosa Nostra, where you take a contract to kill somebody? What obligation do you have not to kill others that may be with them at the time?
Well, as far as I could talk with Maranzan, he gave us orders all the time. He was always careful about hurting any innocent people. And these painters, it wouldn't figure for them to talk.
How many were killed during this 14-month period of undeclared war and what you term declared war? Do you know how many people were killed altogether during that time on either side or both sides?
Senator, I got the score. The score was we lost 1, and they lost from 40 to 60.
From 40 to 60?
Yes.
From 40 to 60 people killed as a result of this undeclared war and the declared war that followed after the 2 men were killed that identified your group as the killers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
These would be in the other group, the Masseria group.
Well, you always have to call it Masseria's group.
Who?
Masseria's group.
Masseria, that's the way you pronounce it. Do you know the name of the one of your group that was killed?
Ours, we lost the one in Chicago.
He was...
Joe Aiello.
He was from Chicago.
Yes.
He was killed.
So with the 1931 murder of Joe Masseria, Salvatore Marenzano became the boss of all bosses in the New York area. A big 5-day running banquet is held to raise money for the new boss and his soldiers. They raise $115,000, but Valachi says he gets none of it. He resumes his part-time burglary work to stretch the dollar, and then one day is summoned to the boss's home on Avenue J in Brooklyn. Valachi says Marenzano told him he had paid him nothing because he doesn't want to lose him. There is a new gang war coming.
So he told me that we can't get along. He meant he can't get along with Charlie Lucky and Vito and them, and he gave me a list. He says, we got to get rid of these people.
Got to get rid of them.
We got to get rid of them. So on the list was, I'll try to remember as I go along. Al Capone, Frank Costello, Charlie Lucky, Vito Genovese, Vincent Mongo, Joe Adonis, Dutch Schultz. These were all important names at the time.
Some 10 or 12 altogether?
10 or 12, yes. Now he tells me, I forgot to tell you, Senator, there was a rumor passed up in the office a little while before, say a few days before. As I'm talking now, I remember that. Not to come up in the office with any guns. Nobody come up there with any guns because they expect the police up there. I got to talking with some of the members, and I said I didn't like that order. So he said, well, this other fellow, whoever may have been, he says, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. I says, I'm afraid that they're trying to prepare us to be without any guns. I just don't like it. That's the way I talked. Well, we let it go that way. Now, when he told me about the mattress, and he told me that he was going to have the last meet at 2 o'clock in the office tomorrow.
Now, by mattress, did that mean that you would hole up in a house and just sleep on mattresses somewhere?
Well, you see, that's the way...
Give us a description of what you mean by it.
You see, we were using mattresses, for instance, when they moved from one house to another. Now, the purpose of that is you never know when you're going to go in a minute's notice. So they used to use mattress, but naturally he always had the bedroom. See, that was when I was at his headquarters. That's the meaning of mattress. That's why I understood. Yeah, did I give it to you clear?
I think so. Go ahead.
So I said, can I talk to you? See, we called him in Italian, Don Diried. Don Diried means Don Sarto. See? As can I talk to you? Well, he was the kind of a man you could talk to. He wasn't the kind of a man that he thought he was a general and you can't say anything to him, see? As can I talk to you? I said, look, after all, if I lose you, I'm out in the street. I got all reasons to worry. I said, must you go on this appointment? Can't you let Angel Caruso go? I said, if it's this, your last meet, he's not, I gotta go.
You were trying to keep him
I'm trying to tell him, if this is your last meet, why should you go when the other ones, they usually send the underboss? In other words, I'm trying to tell him, if you got something in mind, why jeopardize yourself for the last time? Well, he's not.
Who was he to meet with?
Vito Genovese and Charlie Lucky at the office on 46th Street.
Whose office?
Mananzan's office.
He was going to his office to meet them.
Next day.
At 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
All right, go ahead.
So he's telling me about what we're going to do, how big we're going to be, and, well, I wasn't interested at Senate at this time, and I feel, as I say, I was away. Now I go back again. I wasn't too happy. Well, I went along. He told me I should call the office at 1:45.
Were you to be there, meet him there at 2?
No, he told me to call the office.
Call the office?
At 1:45. And that afternoon, I called the office at 1:45, and Charlie Buffalo answered the phone. He said that everything was all right. He said I need not go down. So that day I met, the Gep came around, and he decided we'd go to Brooklyn. We knew a couple of girls in Brooklyn. I said, it's a good idea. We got nothing to do. We took a ride to Brooklyn. We were away all that day, and we got back in New York about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we landed in Charlie Jones's restaurant on 14th Street, 3rd Avenue. And when we went in the restaurant, we had the girls with us. When we went in the restaurant, I noticed there was like some guy would walk in and look us over, he'd walk out again. Then I noticed another guy would walk in and looking us over. I looked at the Gep, he looked at me. I says, I don't know. So Charlie Jones, which is sort of a businessman, like he ran prop games, he owned dance halls, and he was in that line of business, see? So he moved over to me, he told me, go home. And I walked outside, I looked at the Gep. I said, well, what do you think? He said, I don't know. He says, we'll break it up. I said, all right, I gave the girl some money. I told him to go home, back to Brooklyn. And I went home alone, and I left the Gep down there. So when I rode through Lexington Avenue very slowly, when I reached in Harlem, see, it's the same place where we used to hang out. And I noticed there was about 6 or 7 boys on the avenue. As I passed by, they whistled at me, but I didn't stop. I kept going. So I went home. I lived about 2-3 blocks away from there. About 10-15 minutes later, 3 of the boys that I proposed and put in were all shot up, but they weren't hit. They only had powder marks.
Powder marks?
Powder marks all over.
They didn't have bullet marks, just powder marks?
Just powder marks.
All right,
it's amazing. All 3 were missed. So So I said, we was on the corner when they whistled.
What are their names? You want to give their names?
Yes. Buck Jones.
That wasn't Charlie Jones now, the one that's down the red.
No, that's
Buck
Jones.
All right.
Billy Muggins and Johnny D.
Johnny who?
Johnny DeBellis.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I had the newspaper under my arm. I still can't figure it out. All of a sudden, when I went in the house, I was laying on a couch trying to figure out these moves. I didn't even open up the newspapers. Well, when they come in, all of a sudden I happen to look and I see headline, Park Avenue murder. Well, I jumped at it. I knew we had the office on Park Avenue. That's the first time I read about Manenzana being killed in his office that afternoon.
So another boss of all bosses was dead and another power struggle had ended. The new boss who emerged at Valachi was Salvatore Luciano, alias Charlie Lucky, and his underboss, Vito Genovese, alias Don Vitone. During the afternoon session, Valachi was questioned more closely about the death of Marenzana. Valachi said his information, second-hand, had come from Bobby Doyle, the one from Hartford.
There was 4 Jews went up there, and they posed as policemen. And he found out. Now, how he found out, but he's telling me the story. And they posed as policemen. I says, you remember the time they passed the room with no guns up there? He says, yeah. Remember I was suspicious? He says, yeah. Well, they brought Manenzan in the other room, while the other 2 stood with the crowd. There was quite a crowd up there to talk business. In other words, they posed as police, showed him a badge, that they want to talk business with him, So he agreed. But when they got in the other room, Manenzana seemed to have gotten wise. And they intended only to cover him, not to shoot him. And Manenzana went for a pistol. He had a pistol on him. And they were forced to use a shot on him before they cut his throat. So I was running away with it. Now I correct it.
Well, now you said that some Jews killed him. Is that right?
What's that? The Jews, yeah.
Who had
well, later on,
dressed as policemen.
They acted as policemen. They posed as policemen.
Posed as policemen.
Right.
And were they members of Cosa Nostra?
No.
Well, how did they get into the picture?
Well, they were close. They were very close with Charlie and Vito at that time. That's Meyer Lansky's crew.
They were close to
Vito and Charlie Lucky. They were close with them.
But were they? Did you get any information they were employed to commit this murder?
Well, Senator, they seemed to work together at times. See, they had trouble of their own later on, which I'll explain. And Vito and Charlie helped them when they had trouble amongst themselves.
Valachi testified he learned 6 years later that one of the 4 killers was Red Levine. He said Levine himself told him of the killing. Within a week of that murder, Valachi had switched gangs again, this time joining up with Luciano and Genovese. Valachi returns next week to Capitol Hill. We shall return later tonight for another special report. This is Roger Mudd in Washington.
This has been a special report from CBS News. The Congress and Cosa Nostra portions of this program were on edited videotape.